'Cause I heard you got it somewhere I can stay. And I'm alone. And I realize when I get home that I wanna go to my red and my cherry.
All right, we all set, bro? All right, like I said, floaters around 718, 719. Oh! I might keep the store open a little bit. That's fine. We don't bring no reverb. Test, test, test. All right, bro.
All right, good morning, everybody. 6 minutes after the top of the hour, it is the syndicated Ed Dean Radio Show mornings as we broadcast 6 to 8. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is good to be back from Dallas, Texas. We were in Dallas, Texas for a few days. We're out there for the Americans for Prosperity event. Thousands of people. Rick Perry, Rand Paul, Ben Carson interviewed a lot of these guys. We had Radio Row. So I did the afternoon show. Many of you may not know where you should be, where I also host an afternoon radio show, syndicated also. So it's good. I love Dallas, man. Texas is great. Do you not like Dallas?
I've been a couple times. It's like pretty nice.
What part of Texas do you like there? What part of Texas do you like?
I've only a little about.
That's you. Oh, so we had a great time. The food is excellent. The people were great. But it is good to be back home. A lot going on. Do you know what? I mean, yesterday was Labor Day. You know what today actually is? It is really the beginning of kickoff for 2014 elections out there. You saw this ad that came out a few weeks back that Democrats were all up in arms in a good way. That's saying that maybe the Republicans are not winning against the Unaffordable Health Care Act, that Republicans have stopped their anti-rant against Obamacare. And I kept saying on the radio show, guys, they're keeping their powder dry, because all the big anti-Obamacare ads will come out later in October, everything ready to go. So everybody starts to focus on this right now, as they should. And there is a lot of talk, and are you ready for this? The Democrats in the state, we're going to get to this in just a little bit, because I want to get to many of your emails. The Democrats in this state, not only them, but the Democrats throughout the rest of the country are all peed off right now, because there wasn't that many Democrats that voted for Charlie Crist in the Democratic primary. I have an answer for that. And to my conservative friends, it is not because the Democrats are not energized, and it's not because Rick Scott's great. It's got nothing to do with that, but at the bottom of the half hour, or in that area, I will break it down as only Ed Dean can, give you the reasons why that the Democratic turnout in this state was low. And I'll give you a few, and I'm talking logics here, folks. So we'll get to that here in just a little bit. The email address, eddeanradio@gmail.com, eddeanradio@gmail.com. You want to watch us live on the air, you can go to eddeanradio.com, eddeanradio.com. Twitter's at eddeanradio, facebook.com/eddeanradio. Again, the email address, eddeanradio@gmail, eddeanradio@gmail.com. You can also catch us on your cell phones. Go to iHeart. For iHeartRadio, go to iHeart.com, iHeart.com, and type in WAXE. I'm just going to leave email. There's so much data ready to go. Now, I want to talk about, is there going to be more racial components in this up year's election? I am convinced, and you correct me if I'm wrong, to me, it's about issues. It's not about the left, not about the Republicans versus Dems. It's about issues. And as it always should be about issues. But follow me now. If Dems cannot get their act together, could we be seeing Ferguson's pop up all throughout the rest of the country? Now, just following it for a second as a political tactic, I'm not trying to issue some sort of, some race component here, but maybe it is. If the Dems can't win, and I'm not saying they're going to be all full-out throttle for the Republicans. I just want to know, if the Dems can't win, will we end up seeing Ferguson's all throughout the rest of the country? And why not? It would be smart to do. I mean, remember, the Tea Party won heavily in 2010. And why? Because they had rallies, not riots, but they had rallies all. You don't have to agree with them or not. I'm just saying they had rallies all throughout the rest of the country. And it worked. And it sold for many people. So what I'm getting at, is it possible you will see these type of protests? Well, you sure as heck won't see the riots. I can promise you, you will not see riots in Ferguson down here in the state of Florida. It will not happen. This type of nonsense will not be put up with. But is it possible that if the Dems cannot get their act together, if there's polling out there, and not everybody likes Congress, I understand that, Republicans versus Dems, and it always surprises me, it's not the 80% that don't like Congress, it's the 20% that do like Congress that think they're doing a good enough job. But is it possible you could be seeing Fergusons all throughout the country? I think it is quite possible. And why not? They can't one of these issues. They got to drum up the war on women. They got to drum up all this whole contraception nonsense. And I think when it comes down to the argument of Obamacare, that comes down to the argument of the economy, which in one week the president wants to take credit for, and the other week, well, we're still blaming Bush, we're blaming the Republicans, we're blaming the Koch brothers. I mean, whatever. I think you will. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the head of the DNC, the Democratic Congresswoman down in South Florida, came out, we played this clip on our radio show, came out a couple years back and said, oh yeah, the Republicans, they want to bring back Jim Crow laws. They literally, she said this quote, they literally want to stop you at the polling places from you getting in at the doors, which he's talking about black people out there. And my question is, wait a second, how do I know how black people are going to vote all the time? I mean, Alan West was a congressman down in South Florida here, and you mean to tell me that there weren't any black people voting for Alan West? I'm sure there were. How do I know? Is this a Jedi mind trick? Do I have ESP without the N? Do I know how black people are going to vote in a lot of these districts? I have to assume yes. A lot of times they will vote for the Democrat. But what if there's a black Republican? If they vote normally based on skin color, and that is how it's perceived in many areas, especially by the newspapers, then what if I run a conservative black individual? What takes place there? And she says, literally, the Republicans want to stop you at the door about voter suppression, which is a bunch of BS. There is a thing such as voter suppression. For example, in 2004, there were black conservatives with the George W. Bush campaign that went into the black communities, registered boatloads of black people in 2004. Now, where's the voter suppression? Well, they didn't come out and vote, as you may say, well, they didn't come out and vote for Bush, yeah, but they didn't come out and vote against Bush. Because why? Hey, they did the right way. They did what Mitt Romney should have done. They did what the Republicans normally should have done. They went into those areas and acted like missionaries. They didn't show up at an NAACCCCP meeting here. They didn't show up to some black rally here. They didn't show, I mean, no. They became like a missionary in a field. Now, I'm not saying you're going to win over the black vote that way, but you know what? If they didn't come out and vote against you, is that called voter suppression? Maybe in a way, maybe in a good way. It happens. But maybe it should be called voter oppression, where we're paying communities and minorities in communities to go vote in 2, 3 election areas. It still takes place these days. Many of the Democrats don't like this. Well, we want an ID when you want to come out and vote. Well, why not? I have to have an ID for everything else. I mean, to drive a car is a privilege. It's not a right. And yet I got to have ID to show that privilege. Yet I don't need an ID. Hey, if I want to go buy a gun, you want to get some guns? I do. It is a right. Sorry, I wasn't trying to get personal. I'm just asking. It is a right to own a gun. I have to show an ID if I want to buy a gun. Voting is a right. But yet, to the liberals out there, I shouldn't have to show an ID. And if I ask for an ID this year, it is voter suppression. It is bringing back the Jim Crow laws. It is about bringing back the poll tax. By the way, may I remind you that all that was started by the Democrats. By the way, may I also remind you that the Jim Crow and the poll tax was not only against black people, but was against poor, white Republicans. I'm not trying to make this a partisan issue. I'm just saying if you really want to go down this road. And I will tell you this right now, that this has always been an issue for years. It will continue to be an issue about race, race, race. That if we don't have the right individuals, or that if we don't get Obamacare, or that the Republicans get what they want, we're going to see more Fergusons happen throughout the country. Bet my word on it. As a former news reporter, bet what I'm saying to be true. You will see other Ferguson, well, what's the word I want to use here? Other comments that'll be Ferguson interjected into other comments. If you don't like this issue, we're going to have more Fergusons here. If this doesn't happen, we're going to have more Fergusons here. It is an absolute, complete joke. May I remind you that the people being arrested in Ferguson aren't even from Ferguson. But you want to try this garbage in other states. You want to try riots. You want to try looting. Protest, no problem with. I think if those in the black community don't like something that's happening, by all means, protest. I mean, I don't get it. Why is it wrong when members of the Tea Party, other groups can do it? It's called anti-government. But when it comes from other groups from the left, it's called addressing grievances. It doesn't make sense. When I come back from the break, let me show you how selective thinking those on the liberal left are, and how they don't properly, and they cannot properly address this issue of the voting ballots and the issue of race. Because Governor Rick Scott wants to purge the voting list, and they should be purged, by the way. But when I come back from the break, I will show you where the left has been wrong on the issue of voter purging. The email address, eddeanradio@gmail.com, eddeanradio@gmail.com. This is the Ed Dean Radio Show. Hey, Karen. You hear me like that? Oh, okay, that's good. No, not mine. I'm talking something other music out there. Hold on a second. Okay, that's fine. That's cool.
Business person can now capitalize on the enormous foot traffic of a competitor facility with ample parking. Join their growing complement of class operators at Vera's World Bazaar and Depot right next to the Why Not Bistro, now hosting its new party. Guard the perfect venue to grab a bite to eat, enjoy craft beer, or watch the game while the family shops at or new store. Apply in person today at Vera World Bazaar and Antique Mall in South Bureau Square, right next to Why Not.
Twenty minutes after the top of the hour, the Ed Dean Radio Show syndicated all throughout the state. The email address, eddeanradio@gmail.com, eddeanradio@gmail.com. You can also watch us live on the air at eddeanradio.com, eddeanradio.com. A couple of years ago, Governor Rick Scott wanted to, quote, purge the voting list. And the necessity of purging the voting list is finding out who is voting legally and who isn't voting legally. And it had nothing to do with illegal aliens. It had nothing to do with race. For example, those that are still voting, we do have voter fraud in this country, folks. We do have voter fraud in the state. We've had voter fraud in South Florida. I'll get to that in a few moments. But Governor Rick Scott, agreed upon by the Attorney General, rightfully so, said what we needed to do was purge the voting list to find out who is alive and who isn't alive, who's here illegally and who isn't here illegally. And the Democrats went rampant about this. The Democrats said this is nothing but Jim Crow. The Democrats said this is nothing but the poll tax. The Democrats said that when you look at this was, of course, being anti-black, anti-woman, anti-Hispanic, blah, 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 blah. And you know what happened? They were purging the voter list. And you know who was hurting the most? The Republicans. The Republicans were getting wiped off the purging list. It wasn't the Democrats. It was the Republicans out there. And of course, it was all quiet by the libs. Did you know, for example, in South Florida? Now, let me just set this out here. Allen West lost in his district. I'm going to offend some of you out there because there's some hardcore Allen West fans. I know I've interviewed Allen West. He did not lose because of voter fraud. Now follow me. I've covered this a million times on this radio show. Does voter fraud exist? Yes. In fact, I don't even blame Mitt Romney for losing the state for voter fraud. I know many of you out there on the conservative aisle, my side, want to blame Mitt Romney for losing due to voter fraud. No. Mitt Romney was not that great of a candidate. Was there voter fraud? Yes. But very little. I'll explain this in a moment. Was there enough voter fraud to push over Barack Obama? I don't think so. Barack Obama just did a better job addressing the issues. Like him or not, he gets credit. The Democrats did a supreme job here in the state of Florida. There was voter fraud in South Florida, provisional ballots, and basically what happens is that there are two ways of doing this. If you get a you get an absentee ballot, and let's say you don't vote by the absentee, you don't early vote. Remember, there's 3 areas of voting. There's the absentee, then there's the early vote, which I'm not conflicted about early voting. I want to make it more cost effective here. And then you have the traditional voting on election day, which is what I normally do. And so what took place is that if you don't vote on absentee, you can go to the voting booth that day and sit back and tell the person working the which is normally senior citizen, which is fine. They're not there to cause problems. You show up there, and this is how some of the voting fraud takes place. You sign up to be on the voting of absentees, and I'm not really sold on how the absentees are done, by the way. I'll get that in a few moments. The absentees, the money that's being spent, and how they do the absentee ballots, for example, if you requested one, but you didn't request one, but they put you on a ballot, and you haven't voted, they still send you out requests for the next 3 to 4 elections out there. It is an absolutely complete waste of time and money here. I didn't even need to go back to the old days. You want an absentee ballot, you request it. Show some sort of daggone responsibility. So in South Florida, what happens is that, for example, you ask for an absentee ballot. The absentee ballot from your area is not filled out. So you go to the day of election day, and you sit back and go, hey, I want to vote here, but I don't have my ID on me. Oh, well, nobody wants to be cried as a racist. So what they do is it's called a provisional ballot. And you can fill out the provisional ballot. Of course, that's normally counted last to make sure that your ID matches up with you. But this is, well, then, why don't they check for their ID? That's the great question. And many of you liberals out there will sit back and say, well, there's all this voter ID. How come it's not prosecuted? Unless you ask them for their ID, unless you ask them are they registered, and nobody wants to come across as a racist or suppressing somebody's vote, there can't be any prosecutorial and prosecuting individuals. If you can't ask them for their ID, then how do you know if they're voting legally or not? And yet, in this state, is there voter fraud? Yeah, but not enough, I don't think, to warrant massive recounts. Allen West in the Port St. Lucie, Fort Pierce area to West Palm lost because Allen West did not work the campaign. Tell me one area where he walked. He didn't even walk in the black precincts. In fact, I've had Republicans tell me, and they all loved Allen West. Allen West didn't show up to the walk. He didn't work it. And by the way, this district is not a conservative district. For years, this was the district represented by the very moderate, and I've known him for years, Mark Foley. Mark Foley, the bisexual gay congressman out there, was the congressman for this area. It's not a right-wing area, folks. The Republicans that live on the beaches are very moderate because they're very pro-environmental, blah, 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 blah. They're not hardcore like some of you may think they are. Patrick Murphy will probably end up winning re-election in that area because Patrick Murphy does not come across as a liberal. But yet, when Allen West lost, I remember all my conservative friends, oh my word, it was voter fraud. Look at this. Oh, well, okay, why was it voter fraud in Allen West's district, but not where Alan Dick Grayson won? Or with Joe Garcia, the Democrat in South Florida won? Why is it to some of my conservative friends, and sometimes I heart more of my conservative friends than I do on the liberals out there, because conservatives need to get it right. But yet, if we don't want to race, wow, we blame voter fraud. There must have been voter fraud out there, and there's just no election reason why. And we know that somehow in the town of Fort Pierce, where the mayor that lost won, and the mayor that won lost, I understand that. But how in the world do you conjure up 2,400 to 4,000 votes and to have everybody in on it and call it voter fraud when you didn't even truly represent the district before and you truly were not working in the district then? This will be an issue in the 2014 elections. It will be an issue by Charlie Crist, because the Dems are all worked up that they didn't show up on Election Day last Tuesday. When I come back, I know we got a couple minutes here, but on the other side of the break, I will show you where, to the Republicans, do not read into this, and to the Dems, don't read into this. I think they're a little worried. The national Dems are like, well, what's going on here with these Democrats in Florida, and how come they didn't show up last week? I get a very simple answer and the reason why. And it's not about an issue. It's about something more logical. And I'll prove why. But some of the Republicans do not sit back and say, oh, the Dems are going to stay home. I mean, it's quite possible. But what happened last week was not a fluke. What happened last week was not because of the Republicans. It was not because the Democrats were lazy. I'll just prove to you why based on the amount of races. There's your hint last week that did and did not exist. Also coming up, Dana Ruas, political commentator, who was the flavor of 2014 for the presidential election in 2016. Black conservative radio talk show host Willie Lawson is also going to join me. Ben Carson's a conservative black guy, neurologist. But is this a craze? We'll talk and debate all this on the other side of the break. Also in a few moments, when I come back and tell you the reason why the Dems and Republicans should not be reading too much into why the many Democrats didn't vote last week. Also about the environment. What's better, cooling weather or warm weather? Back in a few moments. EdDeanRadio@gmail.com. EdDeanRadio@gmail.com. This is the Ed Dean Radio Show. How we doing, okay? Good. $33 after the top of the hour. It is the Ed Dean Radio Show with you all the way up till 8 a.m. this morning. The email address, eddeanradio@gmail.com, eddeanradio@gmail.com. If you want to watch us live on the air, you can go to eddeanradio.com, eddeanradio.com. Also, on your cell phones, you can just go to iheart.com, iheart.com, and type in the call letters WAXE. Last Tuesday, and we predicted this for months, it was horrible. The voter turnout in the Democratic and Republican primaries, some of the worst. Now, there were some counties that had like 40, 50%. Throughout the rest of the state, it was around 19, 20%. And some of these counties, Vero Beach, Indian River, Brevard, 19, 20%. What a dismal failure. Shame on many of you that you got your butts out there and voted. Well, Ed, wasn't anything sexy in my race. Okay, I understand that. And if there wasn't, well, wait, did you not have some school board races? What about the school board doesn't excite you? And yet you saw what was going on with Charlie Crista's race. And did you guys see what happened where the news media came out? The news media came out all over and sat back and said, shame on the Democrats. Where were the Democrats? How come the Democrats wouldn't vote for Charlie Crist? Oh, man. I mean, it was all the way from Joy Reid, from MSNBC, all the way down to all the local editorial boards here in the state of Florida. And they all sat back and said, oh, shame on the Democrats. This is bad news. This should not be happening for November. And I sat back on my radio show and I said, who are these flippant idiots? Do they not know logistics? Do they not know who was on the ballot? The reason why, for the Democrats, by the way, there was such a low voter turnout was because there were not that many Democratic primaries out there, folks. This is the reason why the Democrats did not show up at the polls last week. It was not because they were suppressed by white people. It was not because they were suppressed by the Tea Party. It was not because they were suppressed by Republicans from Jim Crow or poll tax nonsense. The bottom line is that there were more Republican primaries for county commission. There were more Republican primaries for state senate. There were more Republican primaries in this state, in a lot of districts, from what we can tell, for state house than they were the Democratic seats out there. Now, I give it to you that there were a lot of nonpartisan seats out there. And nonpartisan means that both parties and all the independents can come out and vote. But still shame on the reps, and still shame on the Democrats for a 19, 20% voter turnout. It was horrible. Now, the question says, is this based on the candidate? Or is this based on the market? The market is you, the voter out there. Are we all apathetic? Are we all a bunch of lazy idiots out there? Or is it because the free market, us, was not addressed properly? Is it because us, the free market, well, guess what? None of these races are sexy. That is quite possible. But to the Republicans out there, don't buy, I mean, in a way you could see this, but don't buy into the notion that the Democrats are not going to show up in November because it's such a low voter turnout when it came to Nan Rich, better if you ever heard her talk, she sounds more like Man Rich, excuse me, versus Charlie Crist. And by the way, Nan Rich, who is a liberal, I respect Nan Rich a lot more than I respect Charlie Crist. At least Nan is consistent. Unlike Charlie, who's only been a Democrat for, what, I don't know, 22, 23 months. And on top of that, the guy has got 20 different positions on the positions he just changed 20 other times. So to some of my conservative friends out there and to the liberal listeners, don't buy into the hype. Bill Clinton's going to be down here this week. And I mean, heck, well, I mean, Bill Clinton's a rock star. Why not? But don't think that because many of these guys didn't show up at the polls that they're not going to show up here in November. I just, things can they can transform and I was going to say transgender. That's what some of these Democrats were video watching, man. LGBT, man. But things can transform into other areas. And the bottom line here is that don't buy into the hype of what you may see in September or August and into November, because things will change. Now, let me get out about this. That's the truth, folks. Unless the numbers have not jived up, there were more Republican primaries in a lot of these seats than the Democrats. So that's the reason why the Dems did not come out and vote. Now, let me talk about the environment for a second. Being born and raised in Florida, this radio show syndicated also in other parts of Georgia and South Carolina. When it comes to the environment, I am all for it. The difference is that the way the liberals want to do it and the way that I want to do it are two different worlds out there. The liberals don't have a philosophy, I mean, unless you just spend, and I, as a conservative, am more a conservationist. When you want to tell me that you want to buy property here, and the property's for the children, and the property's for the kids, and yet it grows and grows and grows, and what am I using the property for? Absolutely nada. Now, if you're going to turn the property around and build a park on it, if you're going to build the property around and build, I don't know, maybe a lake or a pond with stock fish in it where kids can go fishing and archery shooting and gun shooting out there, then that is the way you take care of the environment. But the way that's being proposed these days is not the right and proper way to take care of this environment. And yet, they're going to argue an excuse about global warming, and somehow this is going to hurt Republicans coming up in the 2014 elections. May I tell the Republicans out there, please do not get into a bidding war with Democrats. You will lose. The bidding war is about who can spend more money to fight ozone depletion, who can fight the Arctic ice polar melt caps down wherever, who can somehow fight gas emissions made out there by man-made products. And yet I will tell you that volcanoes of Mount Pinatubo, Mount St. Helens, will put more gas emissions into the air than all that of the gas of man-made products combined. Somehow we're going to properly spend the money in the Inner River Lagoon. And yet the way I'm trying to tell you is there's a way of taking care of things. Unfortunately, you cannot get into a bidding war with the Democrats about who can spend more money. You will lose this battle. Let me throw some devil's advocacy points out there to you. Because I have no problem with talking about the environment. I think this whole thing about global warming and how it's now transitioned into climate change. Well, wait a second. One of the coldest temperatures we've seen on record in 2014, was that because of global warming? Yes, that's what they tell you. A lot of it had to do also, well, we can't use global warming. I mean, if it's 30 degrees below normal, that's because, well, global warming doesn't work because of the word warming with cooling, so now you need to use the words climate change. Do you know that Virginia and many parts of the Southeast and many parts of the Midwest this summer, in dozens of years, did not see 90-degree weather, saw record cool temperatures, and yet, was that because of global warming? No, it's because of climate change. And yet, if I got a global cooling that's taking place, somehow there's something wrong with that, that we need to tax man more, that we need to tax more of these big companies out there, that we need to have more of a CAFE standard when it comes to cars, because I get to enjoy, well, I didn't because I live in Florida, but because friends of mine enjoyed a nice cool down that they have not seen in years during the summertime, and somehow that is something wrong because why? It's climate. It's global. Yeah. It's climate change. And yet, global warming, climate change. Come on, folks, I'm getting confused here. Tell me, do you prefer global warming or would you like global cooling? I will tell you when it comes to the wintertime, I don't mind global warming. And when it comes to the summertime, I will take global cooling any day of the week. Now, let me break this down here. If you really want to talk what's good, now I'm not here to talk about what's good in Iowa. I'm not here to talk about what's good in New Hampshire because the economies are much different than here in Florida. But let me stick to where I know, to where I'm from, here in Florida. All right? So let's do this. You tell me what is worse, global cooling or global warming? Remember, global warming and all the emissions put out by men up there stay in the atmosphere. They don't totally evaporate. And, of course, that screws up the ozone. That screws up the polar ice caps. Okay, whatever. So let's go down this road. Because now Climate change has to deal with everything. And yet I don't have a problem with climate change if I'm at 90-degree weather and I prefer 80-degree weather. Is there something wrong with that? Is there something wrong that I normally might get 20 below, but instead I'm only getting 20 or 30 degrees, and somehow people cheer that on? They like that kind of weather up north because it's cold but not as cold, but yet there's something wrong with that. You know that ozone is created by the sun. You know that the ozone layer, that the sun goes beneath the Earth's horizon for like 6 months, and that because, do we need to go back and address science again? So let me throw this out here at you. Let's say we go back to the issue of what's better, global cold, cooling, or global warming. Now follow me. In the state of Florida, when you have extreme cold weather, and we've seen it over the last 4 to 5 years, we've seen our Indian River Lagoon freeze up here, where we've seen fish die off due to cold weather. That, by the way, that's natural occurrence. That's not all done by man. Now follow me, because I'm going to get a little technical here. But primarily here in the state of Florida, I enjoy cool weather. I like it. This summer, I've seen more of clouds than I have of the sun. For some of you that like to sleep in, you probably haven't seen the sun all summer. Let me break this down, because being only here in certain parts of other states, but also here in Florida, let me bring this out. For the economy in Florida, it is better to have warmer weather than it is to have cold weather. Now, going back to the issue of, you guessed it, global warming versus global cooling. Forget the terminology climate change. Just a couple years ago, it was global warming. So let's go back to that. When we had cold, freezing weather here in the state of Florida, it killed tourist industry. Nobody visited the beaches. Nobody went to the ball games. Nobody went to Disney. Nobody went to Busch Gardens. Remember Epcot and Universal Studios, which I'm a big fan of. Islands of Adventure, I go religiously when I can. Remember, they all shut down. They all closed down. Why? Because the weather was too cold. Have you ever seen Disney close down when the weather was too hot? No, I don't. I've never seen it was too hot. Record temperatures? Nope, never seen that either. Oh, I'm going to go further here. Just keep up with me, folks. The tourism industry relies on warmer weather. One of the reasons why the tourism is up in this state, and let's be honest, it's not because of Rick Scott, no disrespect. It's not because of the ecotourism here. Personally, I don't think Disney is part of your ecotourism package. It's because of Mother Nature. The North and the Northwest saw some of the coldest weather on record, and they all came to southern Florida, central Florida, North Florida because of the warmer climate. Tourism derives its business off of warmer weather. Look at the spring break this past year. Spring break was booming this year. Why? Because of warmer weather. Warmer weather sells. Now, we don't want to talk about global warming anymore because we've shown that's a farce by those in the liberal left. When I come back from the break, let me even go further into the argument, is warmer weather better than, quote, cooling? Because now we can't use global warming anymore because why would that sell a whole lot, especially when we get cold record temperatures during the summertime. When I come back from the break, let me point out another statistic here in Florida about global warming, aka climate change, where it might be better than the quote global cooling, aka climate change. Back in a few moments, eddeanradio@gmail.com, eddeanradio@gmail.com. It is the Ed Dean Radio Show. Let this keep going. I'll take a second before it picks up. The email address, eddeanradio@gmail.com, eddeanradio@gmail.com. You want to watch me live on the air, you can go to eddeanradio.com, eddeanradio.com, or on iHeartRadio, go to iHeart.com, type in the call letters, WAXC. Now, let me go a little bit further here and explain global warming versus global cooling, how it is affected here in the state of Florida. Remember, we don't say global warming anymore, because why? Well, we've proven that's pretty much a myth. I mean, it does happen, yeah, but I'm not convinced that all it happens from man-made products out there. And so we couldn't really prove that it happened all from man-made products. Now we call it climate change, and we blame that all on man-made products. But yet they can't keep. Is there global warming? I'm sure it is, folks. The question is not is there global warming? The question is it caused by man? And this is where the debate comes in. Now, let me go further here in Florida. Global warming, I believe, is better. Again, let me play devil's advocate here. For all the warm weather, let me break it down because there's two other areas here. For tourism, warmer weather is better. Remember, I don't see Disney being closed. I don't see Busch Gardens being closed. I don't see Epcot, Islands of Adventure, Universal Studios being closed when you have warm weather. No, it is closed when you have extreme cold weather, and that has happened over the last few times, over the last few years, where we've seen the parks close down. You've seen beaches close down. You've seen Canadians sit back and go, it's just too daggum cold to go out there. Warmer weather is better for the economy in Florida and for a lot of other economies than it is for cold weather. Now, let me go further here. Let's talk about the number one area that derives income in this state is tourism. Number two is agriculture. Now, I'm going to ask you this because I'm going to point this out. What is better for citrus industry? What is better for the fruits out there? Warmer weather? Didn't say hot. Warmer weather or cold weather? Cold weather kills oranges. It's not uncommon to get 28 degrees and below and everything else and freezing. Or below 28 to 32. Freezing temperatures kills the citrus industry in this state. Now, again, let's go back to this issue. Global warming versus global cooling now. Which one's better? I don't know how it is in some of your states. I can tell you how it is here in Florida. Global warming. We don't use that argument anymore. Now it's climate change. But let's go back to the originality. Global warming versus global cooling. We know that warmer weather is better for tourism, which is the number one economy here in this state. Again, let's go to the second most powerful ways that the state raises money, which is agriculture. Fruits in the citrus industry are part of agriculture out there. Cold weather kills the agriculture business. Warm weather does not. Now, when it gets cooler, yes, the oranges taste sweeter. They taste better. But warm weather mixed in with rain does not kill the citrus industry. In fact, the agriculture industry in Florida flourishes off a little bit of cool weather, not extreme cold, and warm weather, balanced out warm weather with also is rain. Global warming is bad. Yeah? For who? The economy, for what liberals want to deem as the right way to go to attack all these gas emissions put out there by man. Again, I don't have to argue whether it's global warming or not. The argument should be, is it based on what is being not derived by science, that somehow we're blaming all the man-made products out there. As I've told you before, and I said this last week on Newsmax TV, which I'm a regular on, the bottom line here is that politics is driving the science when science should be driving the politics. What am I getting at? There are more gas emissions put in the air by that of Mother Nature, by Mount Pinatubo, Mount St. Helens, than that of all the man-made products combined. Follow the money. It is a booming industry for the liberal left to promote global warming. Hey, you can promote global warming. The question is what is causing all this warm up out there? And by the way, is warmer weather better than / colder weather out there? Because we have to do something because well, I'm asking the question. Because I can tell you here in Florida that warm weather thrives. The economy thrives off of warmer weather. Record tourism is up in this state. And it's not because of cold weather, it's because of warmer weather. Tourism jobs is up in this state, not because of colder weather, but because of warmer weather. See, I've always been fascinated by this argument of global warming versus global cooling out there. Because when the economies are being affected, and by all the CAFE standards, and by all the regulations put out there, by the DEP, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, by the Environmental Protection Agency, through ocean stuff, that somehow we have to force people to somehow deal with their engines or whatever, that we've got to stop all this nonsense. And if you really had a major problem, and it could be proven that man is the problem with climate change, that somehow, can I ask you a question? You'd have one heck of a lawsuit. Would you not? I mean, if gas emissions, now follow me real quick. Remember all the hurricanes in 2004, even Hurricane Wilma in 2005, also in 2005, Katrina? We were all told, Superstorm Sandy, that if we didn't pass the Kyoto Treaty, if we didn't pass environmental protection, because man makes all the problems in the world today when it comes to emissions in the air and the stays in the environment, it causes all this, and hurricanes are caused by climate change, and it's all based because of man's fault. Can I ask you a question? If man was to blame If the auto industry was to blame, if coal industry was to blame, anything that causes global warming, you'd have one heck of a... Why are we not hiring lawyers to sue these products for the damage done by man that causes the problems in the weather today? Folks, I got news for you. If this could be proven, you would have one heck of a lawsuit out there. And yet, they're not out there. They're not running wild. Why? Because all this nonsense cannot be proven that if there is global warming, it's caused by man. Because if it could, the lawyers, the trial lawyers, would be making a boatload of money off of this. And yet we sell this as somehow passing a bill would have stopped Superstorm Sandy. Can I ask you a question? Before the Environmental Protection came along in 1971, 72, what caused all those storms of Hurricane Donna, all the other ones, in the 40s, what caused all those storms then? Before man-made products and the combustion engine and all the other man-made products came through. Tell me, what caused all them back then? And they cannot tell you. When we come back from the break, my good buddy Dan Ruas, Willie Lawson from the Willie Lawson Show also is going to join us in the next hour of the Ed Dean Radio Show. Ed Dean Radio at gmail.com. Ed Dean Radio at gmail.com. Don't go anywhere. I'm not done with you yet. Back in a few moments. That's Dan. No. I have it a long time. We have a place on the. How do you spell your name? QRTO. I won't mention last names on the air. So that's why they go. No, it's the electrician thing. By the way, I don't give a damn fool. Like the mother, Bill was always 7:30, and Willie will call in 7:30. Okay. So yeah, I'm saying we have a wait down. Yeah, which one with retirement? But pay it off. Yeah. Or should I buy another property? You can take that money to pay that house off. Well, if you buy the property, how do you take that money from the property? It depends. What's the market? How much of you owe left on your house?
Depends how much money you'll have left over. If you're already saving money for retirement, you're okay. I would do a little bit of both. If you can, it depends on how much you sell it for. Let's say you get 200,000 for it. Put 100,000 into the bank, or to a Roth IRA, get 8, 9, 10% rate of return on your money, or a good annuity where your money's guaranteed, but you can get like 70%, and then without trying to act like to buy property, pay off the house. You got if let's say you get 200,000, pay off your house or pay a good 70% of your house off, and take that leftover $130,000 and put it away for retirement. And you only have a few years left in your house, and then you sell your house, and then you have a real nice retirement income. And on top of what you say, my father's going to keep them. I want to get this. Okay. Yeah.
You should go when I'm there.
I want, dude. Everybody believes Ecuador is a freaking jungle. It's beautiful. I've seen. Yeah. Believe me, I'll give you. Listen, I'll give you any free advice you need on that. I mean, it's simple. Yeah, I can help you on that. I don't charge anything like that. I help out my friends. Yeah, something like that. You gotta have money, man. Income for your retirement. And by the way, what if your house doesn't sell right away? We ready? Okay, I'm sorry. I was too busy talking. Okay. Hour number 2 of the Ed Dean Radio Show, heard in the mornings, or the Ed Dean Morning Show. It's good to be back. We're in Dallas, Texas, for the weekend. Tim, are you a football fan?
Very, very big college.
Oh, here we go. Now, Dan, by the way, let me get, before I get to Tim, our producer here in a moment, Jody's on vacation. Check it out, the Ed Dean Radio Show, the email address, eddeanradio@gmail.com, eddeanradio@gmail.com. My good buddy, Dan Ruas, are you with me, Dan?
Yes, I am. What's going on?
All right, my good friend, sports and political commentator, Dan Ruas. So, Tim, what college fan are you? Auburn. Yeah, we talked. Auburn's a good school. Who do they play against? Oh, it's Arkansas. Come on, man. I've seen high school teams do better than Arkansas. Dan, what team are you in college?
I went to FAU, but until the kids good, I just feel like grew up near South Florida, so I'm a Cane fan.
Okay. Oh, man. Tim, we don't even recognize Cane fans, do we? No. Anyway, so Cane fans. Anyway, so by the way, what happened is I was out there for I had to go speak. Took the radio show on the road, and you know who played out there in Dallas this week, right? It was the back-to-back national champs.
Oh, the Criminals.
Well, they're not back-to-back. The Criminals. So anyway, so I get on the airplane. I'm like, so it's all everybody's like, well, Lee Corso was here. I'm like, yeah, Lee Corso was asking for Ed Dean, big deal here. And so anyways, but I mean on the boat, not the boat. On the plane, nothing but Seminole, and I'm a Seminole fan. But I mean, I like the Gators basketball team. Can I do that, Dan? I like the Gators basketball team.
Unless you're like Marnie or Governor or something.
Oh. All right. What does Auburn play? Florida State coming up? Auburn's a good school. I like Auburn. LSU doesn't impress me. I've seen fans. I've had some of the worst fans out there. And I'm sure they are. Especially if they get beer bottles thrown at you when you're getting to the toughness there. Yeah. All right, so Willie Lawson from the Willie Lawson Show,
Radio.com is also going to join us here in just a little bit. I'm looking at some stuff here. If you want to watch us live on the air, you can go to eddeanradio.com, eddeanradio.com, or on your phone at iHeartRadio, go to iHeart.com. All right, so I'm at the Americans for Prosperity event. We took the show on the road. We had a blast. I mean, and in Texas, you've been to plenty of times. I was hanging out there with Jason Moore. We did the show. He's going to be on with me tomorrow. We had a great time out there. And so I see Rand Paul, I see Ted Cruz, and Ben Carson. Am I being rude? I mean, I got to watch how I say this damn because of being anti-black. Ben Carson's a good speaker. But to be honest with you, Ben Carson doesn't float my boat, to be honest with you.
I like Ben Carson a lot, but I just think that we talked about the money discussion, which is very half-baked. I mean, I don't see this party making things big. I mean, I'm Ben Carson, brilliant. I mean, compared to Barack Obama, but I mean, I just don't see, throwing someone into the office of the presidency with no previous office holding experience. I just find that short-sighted.
Well, the point I'm getting at is, and I want to ask this as a legit question. Is Ben Carson being treated right, and rightfully so? I mean, there's a market, but the bottom line is he's a conservative black guy who, years ago, I mean, people knew of him, but I mean, he spoke up against Obama, a couple of years ago at a prayer breakfast. Is he becoming popular because he's a conservative black guy?
Certainly, I think that's part of it. I mean, obviously, this party needs more diverse faces and everything, but I think Ben's hurting people. He's a great speaker. I mean, his style is eloquent. I think that's something that really appeals to us, whether it's coming out of a black mouth or a white mouth. I just think that's something, that we like to hear his style of things. And, he's really, speaks to the conservative party.
And you know what? Why not? I mean, why not? If he's a conservative black guy, why not parade him around? Because it's always shown that, well, wait, there can't be that many conservative black people out there. They don't exist.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, they go to
What's his story with what is his thing with gun control? I mean, I understand he's pretty weak on the Second Amendment.
I mean, anytime that if you want any sort of gun restrictions that you get called out as a rhino or something like that. But I mean, I think he's strong on the Second Amendment. He believes in the Second Amendment. I think his concerns on it come from young black number black men.
Sure. Okay, so let me throw a curveball at you. Ready? Let's go to the conservative wing of the Republican Party. What's more to be known as heresy? To be soft on abortion, soft on same-sex marriage, or soft on guns? Which is the death kill? How about that one, huh?
I would say this day and age, it's still absolutely soft on abortion. I think that's the one that, believe it or not, it comes from the point of view that the Republican Party has been relevant on social issues, not on abortion. And if you actually look at the way Americans feel about it, even if you believe in legalized abortion, there is still a vast majority of people who want abortion, the number of abortions brought down in this country. That I think it's a harmful thing for society. And so that's something that I think that, it doesn't seem to be changing. If anything, it's getting very stronger.
Yeah, I agree with you. But there are more conversations about guns these days, open carry versus concealed weapons, schools, resource officers. So it seems that over the last couple of years, due to the unfortunate area of gun shootings in some of these schools, which are not happening all over the place, I agree with you that it's crazy to be soft on abortion for some of the conservatives out there. But for example, the issue of guns has just multiplied on the arena. So I think that the gun issue, I mean, same-sex marriage is a hot-button issue, but it's nothing new with that except for what's taking place in some of the states where the voter-approved bans are being overturned. I think gun still remains a top issue.
I think it's a top issue, and I'll agree with you. I mean, any three of those really have hurt you, and certainly, the two of them all put the abortion and guns, but I think when you make an you're making an anti-Second Amendment argument, which is an anti-constitutional argument. So I think that's really why it doesn't quite hard very much. I mean, Jesus can even, say that, at least abortion is not enshrined in the Constitution as far as, literally enshrined in the Constitution that you have a different ground to stand on. But, yeah, I mean, I'm going to go with abortion, but yeah, I mean, guns is another one. I mean, you come out there and, say that you're for liberal gun control policies, that you're for, some of these policies that have been put forward, almost sounds like you come straight out of the Daily Coast house.
All right, let me throw one. By the way, Dan Rios, sports and political commentator here on the Ed Dean Radio Show. So let me throw one here at you. If you're a member of the liberal left, what would discount you as a weak Democrat? Being soft on guns, being soft on gay marriage, being soft on abortion.
Well, it's actually funny to see that, because how have the Democrats had their majority for, the past 3 election cycles? It's been running pro-gun, anti-abortion, anti-gay marriage Democrats, in a lot of in rural southern areas, the old blue dog Democrat. That's what's gotten them the majority. And I think it's very funny to relate it here to in Florida, which I think is going to hurt Charlie Crist in the end as he's running for governor, is that when police protected him as a Republican, was not like his strong NRA rating. I mean, Charlie Crist never met a gun bill he didn't like and didn't sign.
Right.
When he was governor. I think issues like that are going to come back to hurt him because, that's what protected his right point. On crime, he was very strong on that. And these are issues that are, if you're a liberal, that's very anathema to Charlie Crist's old position. So I think it's going to be interesting to see him, maneuver that, and anyone else who wants to take those positions.
Yeah, I wonder with Charlie running, what becomes more of an objection by Democrats? There's so many of them you can go after Charlie. He's flip-flop on 15 to 18 positions. He's thrown Obama under the bus and he's hugged Obama. He's thrown Obamacare under the bus and he loves Obamacare. He's thrown the pro-lifers under the bus, but he himself used to be a pro-lifer. He's thrown the same-sex marriage crowd under the bus, but he himself used to be opposed to it. The guns. Which one do you take your pick on this year that may be more relevant of the reason why they may not, from the Democratic side, come out and vote for Charlie?
Take your pick on any of these. I don't even know what Rick Scott really has to say. He just plays messages of Charlie Crist's old position. But let him run against himself. He's been able to avoid it so far during the Democratic primary. That was the opposite strategy, was to avoid talking to Andrich, because then Andrich would nail him on, his credentials. And can Charlie talk like a Democrat? Can he sound convincingly like a Democrat? I don't think so. Certainly not like the Democrats I know in Florida. And I think the big danger that Democrats need to ask themselves is, well, if Charlie Crist is a Republican, upset Republican by supposedly acting like a Democrat when he got to office, what's to say that electing Charlie Crist as Democrat governor, he's not going to turn around and start acting like a Republican again?
I think Crist would. Right. I think there are 4 underrated stories that should be written. Number 1 could be the prospects of what would happen if Charlie Crist became governor in a Republican House and Republican Senate, because I think Charlie would end up becoming a moderate. Number 2, how come there haven't been any news articles done of how that a lot of these guys that are now against Charlie in the House and Senate here in Florida all voted in favor of his budgets, all voted in favor of his green energy stimulus nonsense. But I think the 2 of the other best stories will be the day after election. If Rick Scott loses, you'll see Republicans give you the real reason why Rick Scott lost. And if Charlie loses, can you imagine the articles that would be done about Democratic Party and Charlie in this state?
Well, I think, definitely the article that gets written about the Democratic Party is, where are they? I think, we see them going with Charlie here. The leadership of the Democratic Party, it seems like they're so bereft of ideas that they're so, absent of leaders, of anyone who can step up to the plate here to run, that they're just desperate, and they're going with Charlie Crist because he's got a name, because he's old high, and that's about it. I don't think they've done their homework on him. I think they're crossing their fingers and putting a lot.
There you go. They don't have a bench. All right. Let me take a break. Let me take a quick break. When I come back, as of right now, who's the flavor of the month for presidential politics? And I'll throw out about a half a dozen names, and we'll do a little word association with my good buddy, sports and political commentator Dan Rios. And also, is money really going to be a factor in this year's elections? Maybe, maybe not. I'll explain why in a little bit. This is the Ed Dean Radio Show.
Why? Yeah, I saw him drive by. Hey, on the break, one little more on that. I mean, 7 weeks ago, before my around like 9, we get out by 20 after the morning.
Educational support, advanced medical resources in heart. It needs comprehensive cardiac diagnostics, breakthrough treatments, and complex cardiovascular surgery with exceptional outcomes. In cancer, our affiliation connects us with the renowned Duke Cancer Institute. It simply means some of the best health care available is right here in your reach. The caregivers at Indian River Medical Center know how special you are to those around you, and we're proud to have the opportunity to help all of you celebrate with for over 80 years. So thank you from all of us.
But I mean, he wasn't complaining or nothing. He wasn't complaining or nothing. Yeah, I just texted him, let him know I called him during break. I know, dude.
We are located at the Deer Beach Airport, where the only thing we overlook is the runway.
And also Dr. Bowell, Dr. Schnell, Dr. Katz, Dr. Kadana Day, Center for Advanced Life Care, 3 doctors that genuinely care about you.
I could. Be more entertaining what's playing during that hour. I'm not saying it to be rude. I'm just, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. How late you work until every day? How late are you working till every day? Twenty minutes after the top of the hour, it is the Ed Dean Radio Show with you all the way up till 8 o'clock. Also, the email address, eddeanradio@gmail.com, eddeanradio@gmail.com. Black Conservative Radio Talk Show host out of Tampa, Willie Lawson's going to join us. I always say Black Conservative. I mean, just, you know, I mean, you don't think there's that many of them around. I mean, are they really an endangered species? I don't think so. I think there's more coming out of the woodwork, as it should be. Dan Ruwas, my good friend from South Florida, he's a sports and political commentator. All right, so let me throw some words down at you and kind of give me, like, you can give me more than like a 1 or 2 word soundbite. Give me like an explanation, yes or no, as of now, why for president? Would it be good? Number one, Rand Paul. What's your take on him? Is he crazy like his father or not?
No, he's not your fellow Dr. Paul. So we have that.
Yeah, you remember when Dan's claim to fame is. Let me explain this to the audience. Dan would go to CPAC and all these political events. So Dan would be our news guy out there. We'd say, okay, Dan would actually sit right behind the Ron Paul crowd, and the Ron Paul crowd just didn't like anybody, did they?
Some of them are very hard to get along with, let's put it that way.
Okay, so Dan would sit behind for years, because Dan and I have known each other for about 14 years. And so Dan would sit behind them, and then he'd be calling in, and then, I mean, just cheering. I mean, it was actually, we almost wanted to take a tape of these guys, how they were cheering, then we put them on the radio show, like the man on the street. Because I think that, listen, I think Ron Paul and some of the problems with Ron Paul, with the crazies associated with Ron Paul. Do you see that now with Rand Paul, his son?
No, I don't actually. And something that's very interesting that's happened is that, you know, that Ron Paul, that libertarian movement there has been, there actually is a divide between some of them and Rand Paul. A lot of them think that Rand Paul has pulled out. A lot of them think that Rand Paul is,
Hey, he did endorse Mitch McConnell.
Yeah, well, that was a big one. That's a very big one. Where it started with I just think it just goes to show that I think Rand Paul is worthy of consideration in that respect. He wants to be peaceful. I mean, he hasn't gone to be effective. I mean, whether it was his filibuster the one time, which was very effective in that regard to it versus Ted Cruz's version of it. He's done a very good job of navigating, this new ground of libertarianism coming to the forefront of the party there. So it's going to be very interesting to see, where that race goes, how many of the Ron Paul people are with us, whether that's a couple of bills going around his head. I think the thing that's going to hurt him now is not necessarily too much, the social libertarian stuff.
Right.
It's going to be the foreign policy stuff.
Throw in. All right. Let me throw. Okay, I need to keep this short now. Some of the answers, but okay. Chris Christie. He's been quiet lately.
He's been very quiet lately. I think he talks with that scandal. I don't think that scandal, in my eyes, doesn't hurt him.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, unless there's a fire there, which it appears not to. But I certainly think he's a moderate faction candidate, if you will. I think someone who can, unite the party from New England.
How about John Kasich, the governor of Indiana? I mean Ohio.
Ohio is very interesting. He is my dark horse that broke his head in because you said it right there. From Ohio, swing state. Don't forget this man is very popular conservative. The base conservative. He was on for a long time there on Fox News.
Right.
Had his own weekend shows there. So he can talk. Doing very well there in Ohio. I think it's a very strong case.
How about Paul Ryan has 20 book stops for his tour, and hold on, wait, and nine of them are in the state of Florida. What does that tell you?
It tells me he's putting his toe in the water too. Not only that, the people on the beach out here, I guess. But
yeah.
But I think Paul Ryan, he lets the flag proud.
You don't think Mitt's going to run, do you?
I think twice in a lifetime is enough for any man trying to do that, and it's very hard to debate that together, so to say, after.
Oh, how about do you know where I see? I mean, you can talk about Jeb Bush. I'm not.
That's my choice.
Yeah, I know, but I'm not. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm not sure he's gonna. I'm not convinced he's gonna run. Let's just put it that way.
Well, you're right, because I can tell you, over the past 4 to 6 years here, the mentioned president around here, Bush, will see his eyes roll out of his head. That's not what actually blows the idea and process of it. Which I think is good. I think that's too slow for him. He doesn't have an ego that needs to be president. It doesn't mean to, I'm a Bush, I have to become president. So can't just let my brother do it and not me. I mean, that really does not mean him. Jeff loves the education issue, working on those issues and putting forward new ideas to reform, schools and stuff. He really seems like that. He's the hard one to convince to do it, but I think he can unite the faction. I think the path to it that's going to work, he'll do it. That's the biggest thing I think that hurts him is that he doesn't have to go to doing it. I don't think he wants to put his family through.
Let me throw out another name who I saw last week, and I really thought he did a good job. Governor Rick Perry of Texas.
Yeah, well, I think Rick wants to run again just because it's sort of like I ain't going out like that.
Right.
Last time it kind of did well for him, but yeah, why not? Governor of Texas, big state. I mean, you gotta love him when he goes out there. And actually, this whole indictment is backfiring big time. It's making him more popular than ever. So I definitely think, he's a friend from the right, so to say, especially as immigration.
I think there's going to be a difference. You're going to see Perry to me can win from the establishments if they don't jump ship like they did last time for Mitt Romney. But he also gains a lot of support from conservatives, social conservatives, and Tea Party members. The only thing that may drag him down a little bit is I'm not all for sending him in a boatload of troops to fight off the Russians along the Ukraine border. I'm not for sending and arming a bunch of terrorists against Assad in Syria. And ISIS, something needs to be done about that. When you kill an American, we should do something about it. But the Iraqi troops, he wants to send ground troops back in there. I'm not convinced that's the right way to go. If that takes place, I think it could turn on and bite Perry in the rear end. If he kind of ignores that a little bit, I think Rick Perry could be a top-tier candidate in 2016.
I absolutely think you can. Just as, I mean, if you look back on it, Romney was a better candidate the second time around. He sounded better.
Right.
He was sharper. I think you'll see the same thing from Rick Perry. I think you're seeing it now. Running the second time, I hope he takes more advice that he takes last time. I hope that he brought his base out there. He can just take the Texas people make the think that running for president, the same as running for governor of Texas, and it's two very different animals. So I think you're right. I think he's coming out sharper. I mean, he certainly looks sharper in those glasses, but not.
Yeah, but I'm saying is that I think he could. He's a conservative. I think he could win this. But here's the problem. He's like Marco. Marco is a conservative. Marco was wrong on one issue, but he was on the top issues when it came to the deficit, debt ceiling, and Obamacare, and yet he gets thrown into the bus with his immigration bill. And I think Marco could win establishment and social conservatives and Tea Party conservatives, and I think Perry could be that same guy.
I see what you're saying about Marco, how the immigration issue hurt him, but you know what? I think that's where it's up to us publicly. I think it's up to us, the Tea Party movement to grow up a little bit when it comes to that, which is we cannot be like the Democrats. We cannot be one issue people and let that ruin everything. If your candidate is going to
10 seconds.
80% of the issue, you've got to go with that.
I agree with you.
We need to win here and we need to win big.
Dan Rewatts, thank you for coming on, brother.
Hey, God bless everybody.
Come up in the next few moments, Black Conservative Radio Talk Show host Willie Lawson. Who's going to get out the vote this year? I'll explain who may and who may not. Back in a few moments. This is the Ed Dean Radio Show. Yes, sir. Sure, 8 to 9, I'll do it. Yep. I'll take care of it. You got it, brother. All right, Uncle Red. Bye-bye. I'll stay 8 to 9. I'll stay 8 to 9. Did my guest call in yet? Freaking A. Might have to play. You might play another commercial for a second. Give it to me. No, it's cool. Yeah, we already played that bumper song, bro. Can we go into another commercial for a second? It'll be okay. Yeah, try not to play the same bumper song in that hour. I'll be ready after this break. Now you went off the air. Just give it over to me. I love that song. Baby, I lost my head. Didn't know. I can't sing for a living. That's why I talk. All right, hour number 2 is what? So Willie hadn't called in yet. I was texting him. All right, well, if he calls in. By the way, we're going to be filling in for our good friend Uncle Rhett. Rhett Palmer Live. We'll be filling in for between 8 and 9 today. So we always look forward to that. Rhett's taking some time off, as he always needs to do and enjoy it. And I guess it's another Labor Day for him. Who knows? So we're going to be filling in for hour number 1. This is the Ed Dean Radio Show, syndicated all throughout the state. The email address, eddeanradio@gmail.com, eddeanradio@gmail.com. You want to watch me live on the air? Just go to eddeanradio.com, eddeanradio.com. Twitter is at eddeanradio, and Facebook at facebook.com/eddeanradio. A lot of Ed Deans there. And also weekly contributor on Newsmax TV. So we'll get all that set and ready to go. I texted Willie, so Willie calls in, let me know. Let me talk about this GOTV. Get out the vote. Everybody's curious. Okay, is more money the answer? A lot of money here, a lot of money there. Rick Scott spending millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. Let me do a little education here. Being outspent 2, 3, 4 to 1 does not always guarantee you a win in the election. Now, it does in some cases. I know when you lose for office, the Republicans do it, the Democrats do it. Well, you know, I was outspent 3 to 1, of course. I mean, that does have a part in winning a race. But it also has to do with the packaging and how you repackage everything in a race. Rick Scott, for the most part, has had a pretty decent year. Not a lot of turmoil in the State House and the legislature out there in the State Senate. He got what he wanted, but he's been spending millions. I mean, he's been outspending Charlie Crist 3, 4 to 1. And in some polls, Charlie's up. Some polls, Rick Scott's up. Some polls, they're tied. So more money is not the answer. It's how you package. It is how you package your issues. Now, let me give you an example. Everybody talks about the evil Koch brothers, all the problems in this world. It's either Bush's fault or it's evil Koch brothers, the Americans for Prosperity. The Koch brothers, which I really, truly like, because they put their money where their mouth is. But yet, the liberal left comes out and says, hey, it's too much money in politics. It's too much money. Yeah, but they never complain about that when Bill Clinton raises all this money. They don't complain when Barack Obama outraises the Republicans, when Wall Street gives more money to Barack Obama than either Republican candidates out there. And yet, where are the liberal Democrats then? Well, it's all this money. So, really? The Democrats outspend money. The Democrats have out-fundraised the Republicans in a lot of areas. But to them, it's okay. Republicans do it. Oh, it's the party of the rich, you know, blah, 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 blah. And yet, everybody talks about the Koch brothers. The Koch brothers this, the Koch brothers that. It's all this money to politics. It's all this money that's going around by all the right-wingers out there. And yet, I will tell you, folks, when you look at those groups that give money, the Koch brothers are like number 51, maybe 57. They're in that range. Do you know who the #1 group out there giving money in the political process today? It's not coming from the right. It's coming from the left. And it's called LU, labor unions. The labor unions are number one when it comes to political expenditures as far as a PAC and as far as a group. And yet you want to blame the Koch brothers, the Citizens United. I mean, but see, when Democrats win, and what if you were outspent 3-1? You brag about it, and rightfully so. You should brag about it. We were outspent 3-1, and Republicans can do the same. We were outspent 5-1 by the Democrat. It's how you repackage things, folks. It's how you eliminate the nonsense. If you get into the verbiage of an idea that translates into more votes with citizens out there with the market. Is money a factor? Yes, it is. Is money the factor? It depends. And yet, Republicans and liberals, and I'm a conservative, so I can say this. A lot of times Republicans love to blame the media. And yet when Republicans screw up, when Republicans say something stupid, I don't blame the liberal media. The media points it out. But yet I will admit when the Democrats say something stupid and that they have a chance, and if they're in the back pocket, vice versa, the media's in the back pocket with them, they're in the back pocket with the media, I'm not shocked if the news media doesn't report certain things. Well, I'm appalled. I read an article where they threw Congressman Bill Posey under the bus because he's a Republican. Well, I'm appalled that you're appalled. It's an editorial board. The majority of editorial boards in this state, the majority of editorial boards in this country are from the left. I know. I'm a former news reporter. I've seen this. I'm appalled that you're appalled. You should not be shocked. But when it comes to this issue of campaign fundraising, to the liberal left out there and to the newspapers, do your research, know your role, know your issues, and know your facts. Because the majority of big money is not coming from the Koch brothers or Tim Phillips of the Americans for Prosperity. They're ranked like a number 50. The majority of money that's coming into these PACs is coming from liberal groups, and the majority of those are, number one, are from the labor unions out there. But yet, is it ever reported? No. You can Google it. You can find out. Trial lawyers give a lot of big money to the liberal left. I'm not saying all trial lawyers are liberal. I'm just saying a lot of trial lawyers give money to the left. The Koch brothers have also given money to some Democrats. The SEIU, the AFL-CIO, the teachers' unions, some of the biggest money is given to the liberal left, and it is from the liberal left. It's kind of like this whole notion that Republicans are the party of the rich. I'm not trying to make this a partisan issue, guys. To me, it's about the issues instead of a partisan label here. But the Clintons are not poor. They're filthy rich. John F. Kerry is not poor. He is filthy rich when he ran for president. John Edwards, running for president, was not poor. He was filthy rich. Sure, Mitt Romney, but the rest of them, were they all rich? No. The majority of blue states in this country are represented by Democrats. Wait a second. Let me rephrase that. The blue states in this country that are the wealthiest and richest states, and by the way, the majority of wealthy and the majority of richest states in this country are all blue states. Okay, the majority of them are all blue states. California, New York, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Delaware, New York. Did I say that already? The wealthiest states in this country are not represented by rich Republicans. They're blue states, folks. They're represented by Democrats. Let's go even a little further here. Excluding maybe Naples and Vero Beach, the majority of wealthy counties in the state of Florida are represented by blue, are represented by Democrats. West Palm Beach, Boca Raton, Boynton, Delray, Riviera, Fort Lauderdale, Miami. Do you want me to keep going on and on and on and on? The wealthiest counties in this state, or the majority of wealthy counties in this state, and I'm not talking by, well, it's three, it's like 3 counties to 1, no. It's like 5 counties to a couple counties. There are more wealthy counties in the state are represented by Democrats. West Palm Beach is one of the most wealthiest communities in the country. And how many Republicans are representing the West Palm area? You guessed it, 0. The last time I recalled. How many Democrats are running the state of New York? Wealthy. Ain't Republicans, it's Democrats. California, Rhode Island, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Alcee Hastings, Peter Deutsch, Patrick Murphy, Lois Frankel, Joe Garcia, all in South Florida. And they're all Democrats. Again, I'm not trying to make this a Republican versus Democrat. I'm just trying to tell you. To me, it's about the issues. But if you want to make this an issue, I will be more than glad to oblige. You mean to tell me that, well, the Republicans, they always want to give tax breaks to the wealthy. Well, okay, I give tax breaks to everybody. But remember, when they had this 250,000 plus more, you were wealthy, then it was, remember, over 400,000, you're going to pay more, you're going to pay 39.8% taxes. As a financial guy, I know this very well. Well, guess what? There were many Democrats that sat back and said, can we do it over $1 million or more instead of doing 250,000, 400,000? I mean, do you not think even the Democrats represent wealthy people? Can I ask you a question? How much is $250,000 worth or $400,000 worth in all those rich states up in New York? That's nothing. Are they considered wealthy? Well, according to the Democrats, they are. According to the liberals, they are. And yet the Republicans are the party for the rich. May I remind many of you out there, by the way, that the capital gains tax cut, capital gains is, what you pay, I don't want to get into it too deep, but off an investment, you pay ordinary income, you pay capital gains, and it's now at 20%. And remember when Republicans for years had wanted to cut the capital gains, it was called cutting taxes for the rich. Do you know which president over the last 30 years had the largest capital gains tax cut? Wasn't W. Wasn't Reagan. It was Bill Clinton. In fact, Reagan raised the capital gains tax cut in 86, 87. W cut was at 20% to 15. It's only 5%. When Clinton was in office, it was at 28%. It got cut to 20%. Because he compromised with the Republicans. Bill Clinton, a Democrat, was looking out for the wealthy. Bill Clinton, a Democrat, was looking out for the rich, because that's what the capital gains tax cut's called. Even though there's 70+% of the American people are invested into the market, capital gains is involved in the market, but capital gains, I remember the articles that as a former news guy in 1997, there were articles that, Bill Clinton's going to cut the capital gains tax rate, and this is a tax cut for the wealthy and rich, and yet he saw what the economy did when Bill Clinton, look at what the economy did when W was in office, and we cut the capital gains. Because it's a tax cut for investment. And when the taxes are less paid out, there is more money that people will invest. It does trickle down. And by the way, a lot of Democrats voted for the Bush tax cuts. In fact, it was Barack Obama that extended the Bush tax cuts in 2010. Does that mean that the Democrats and Barack Obama are the party of the wealthy? Well, you claim that the Republicans are. So let's at least be a little consistent. The biggest capital gains tax cut was that of a Democrat by the name of Bill Clinton. And capital gains tax cuts is what this, in fact, we should eliminate them all. Take a quick break here. We'll come back. And don't forget, we're going to be filling in for Rhett at 8 o'clock. I'll talk more about this Get out the vote. Back in a few moments. This is the Ed Dean Radio Show. You better cut that song short. Maybe a foul word in there. Not doing rep show. No, no. It should have told you. Those people that phone you so separate. You'll have a fit. All right, more at the Ed Dean Radio Show. The email address, eddeanradio@gmail.com, eddeanradio@gmail.com. You want to watch me live on the air, you can go to eddeanradio.com, eddeanradio.com, syndicated all throughout the state. We are the #1 radio talk show in the state. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to watch me live on the air, you can go to eddeanradio.com, eddeanradio.com. We'll be on Newsmax TV, on Dish, and DirecTV. How about that? We'll be doing that, I think, on Thursday. So we'll let you know what's going on. So let me finish this. Let me because see, this whole thing about the rich really intrigues me, because there aren't any poor people creating jobs. It's wealthy people creating jobs. And the goal of every millionaire is to make another million. The goal of every politician is to get reelected. The goal of everybody who can make a decent living is to make more of a decent living. In my case, I'm very blessed. God has really blessed me with the amount of money that I'm able to make here. I am extremely blessed. I'm not like what you may think. I'm blessed. But I want to do it so I can make more money and give more money to charity, give more money to church and things like that. And yet, this whole thing of the argument from the liberal left intrigues me about if you make over $250,000 a year, if you make over $400,000 a year, and by the way, that's profit now, that somehow you're wealthy. And let me explain this one more time. As somebody who has a financial background, I will continue to explain this. Is that there's a thing called profit. I own a business, trust me, I know. There's a thing called profit, and there's a thing called profit margin. Now, if it took you $8 to make that part, but you sold it for 10, is that a high profit margin? No. Did you make a profit? Yeah. But the liberal left believes that you made a profit, you should be taxed highly for that. Yet, if you made your product, and I'm using a hypothetical, but if you made your product for $8, but you were selling it for 15, so in some cases, that's a decent profit margin out there. And yet, when I talk to the liberal left, because we get into all these debates that somehow because we're in $17 trillion and folks were broke, $17 trillion debt, and yet if we just taxed everybody, and yet if you taxed all the millionaires at 100%, you might pay for the government for about 2 months out of the year. Again, this is the group of people, liberals, that don't know math. And you look at the days of JFK, you look at the days of Reagan, Clinton, and Bush W, and you saw when there were tax cuts in place, the economy flourished. Revenues doubled. And yet, People reinvest them to the economy. And the liberal left believes if you make a profit of $250,000, okay, so let's go down this road here. Let's use forget even 250. Let's use 400,000. You made a profit of $400,000. You want to be taxed at 39.40%, not including state and local taxes. So let me go down this road. You've got a family of 4. You've got to pay for a mortgage, car payments, kids' school, kids' taxes, paying off college loans, paying off personal loans, credit card debt. You've got to pay for health insurance. You've got to pay for life insurance. You've got to pay for dental. You've got to pay for car insurance on the 3 or 4 cars you have. You've got to pay property and casualty insurance. Do I need to keep going here? You've got to pay for your retirement. You've got to pay for clothes. You've got to pay for kids' new... I mean, folks, the money keeps adding up. And you own a business, and then not only on top of that, you've got to find money to reinvest into your business. Then on top of that, you've got to find the money to pay for the minimum wage that the liberal left wants. You've got to pay money to fund Obamacare. You've got to pay money you've got to, again, more money to pay for that business's regulations, the business tax. I mean, the business could pay a current tax before the profit. I understand that. But you made a profit. And yet, you're looking to continue to support not only your family livelihood. Oh, yeah, by the way, you got to get money to your church. I mean, you got to pay taxes. I mean, folks, that $250,000 to $400,000 you want to reinvest, plus you're paying for everybody's 401k, you're paying for their health insurance, you're paying for their group life insurance, their simple plan, whatever. Folks, the margin just shrank. And now on top of that, you want to own a piece of property here for reinvestment, for retirement. You want to expand your business. Guess what it does to the profit margin? It shrinks. And if the profit margin really shrinks, but you got to pay for that 401k for your employee, you got to take it out somewhere. What I'm getting at is that I've never understood why if you made over $250,000 profit, you were considered filthy. But by the way, combined income, didn't talk about that now, did we? Husband and wife makes $300,000. Oh yeah, you get taxed on that as well. We're not talking individual. We're talking families now get taxed on that. Got to buy it. I mean, I could keep adding up here. Between what I just told you about paying off student loans, paying for kids' college education, putting money away for retirement, for your insurance, your health care, your life insurance, your investments, your mortgage, your car payments, your house payments, whatever else, because people somehow, unfortunately, cannot control their spending. And then now we want to reinvest a lot of this profit money that we have back into the company. Oh, also, by the way, a $10.10 an hour. Because why? Oh, the Fed's going to want a mandate on us of a minimum wage. Your profit margin shrank. Again, we are told, hey, all these guys are making a profit. Again, in business, to the group of people that don't know math, liberals, Democrats, whatever, there's a difference between profit and profit margin. So don't come here and sit and tell me that the Republicans are the party of the rich, when yet the richest states in this country are blue states, and they're represented by Democrats. In Florida, the wealthiest counties in this state are blue counties. They are represented by Democrats. Makes you wonder how they made their money. Again, I'm not trying to make this a Republican versus Democrat thing. But when I get emails of people giving me myths about nonsense, about myths, about things they don't have no clue what they're talking about, because why? Well, we don't look at numbers. We just hear a soundbite. And by the way, it happens on the right as well. But at least I have to look at my numbers. Why? Because I don't afford the opportunity to be wrong. I don't have the opportunity because I've only got 1 or 2 shots to get it right. All of you liberal left out there, you got a bunch of blanks in your guns, and if not, you got a meanie behind you with a Gatling gun ready to unload on conservatives out there. Why? Because they don't unload on their own groups of people. Conservatives can go after Republicans, and rightfully so. Do you see a lot of liberals going after their own and after Democrats? Do you see other Democrats going after Democrats? Not really. It rarely happens. And if it does, it's rarely reported by the liberal media. But if conservatives go after Republicans or libertarians or whatever, it's a civil war. And yet I can show you articles by the liberal left, by MoveOn.org, the Daily Kos, over the last 4 to 5 months, where they themselves have said, quote, we need to get rid of the moderates in the Democratic Party. It goes beyond just a left versus right. And yet we use sound bites, drive-by. Listen, I'm a drive-by talk show host. I can make my point in about 3 minutes. Some of you takes 30. But yet I totally have to revise other individuals' revision of history. And it gets old and old and old. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to be filling in for our good friend Rhett Palmer from Rhett Palmer Live from 8 to 9. We will have fun with that. The email address, eddeanradio@gmail.com, eddeanradio@gmail.com. If you're not tuning into Rhett Palmer later on, we'll see all of you tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Otherwise, for those of you still listening, we'll be on for Rhett Palmer Live in a few moments right here on the Ed Dean Radio Show. All right, so you have left stuff. Okay, now we come into the Is he going to take your 9? Is that what's going on? Okay. Great. That's probably my guest calling in. Yeah, he's coming on. Hey, I'm filling in for a radio host from 8 to 9 down here in Bureau in Fort Pierce, period. Can you do some radio on the real estate market around 8:30 this morning, question mark?
So I'm saving your show.
All right.
Now, and I'll take Rich show.
Hey, I've got to fill in for Rhett. He's out for about an hour, so I won't be home for probably 9:45. I get the SUV. But when I get home, we'll take the card and get the brakes taken care of. Yeah, that's true. I just got asked. I was gonna be home in 30. He just called me and said, "Can I do it?" So. All right, we'll get it done. I'll be home by 9:45. Yeah, sorry. Anyways, I'll be home around 9:45. Bye bye.